Why were Indian philosophers interested in consciousness in the first place? Because the overriding project, if you look at the trajectory of Indian philosophy, going back all the way 5,000 years, was the self and how to overcome suffering, how to attain fulfillment. And so when you're interested in the self, in yourself, you do notice that you're conscious. Everything that we have is conscious experience. So they became interested in what is consciousness. And they became interested in the question of emergence. So they had a wide range of, they means the whole spectrum of Indian philosophy. They had a wide range of theories. I can sort of give you a bird's eye view of what we are talking about. How does consciousness emerge according to these ancient thinkers? You will see a lot of parallels with what's going on in the world today. One of them is, well, consciousness emerges from matter. Let's call it object. So consciousness emerges from the object. From object to consciousness. That is, from matter to consciousness. Who says this? Just about everybody today. This is the materialist view. You are aware of matter, and from that consciousness emerges. Brain, nervous system, and somehow, we don't know how, we have 29 answers or 325 answers, take your pick. Somehow the object produces consciousness, emergence of consciousness from. Why am I calling it object and not matter? Because to consciousness, whatever it experiences, they are objects. So that's why. So the object produces consciousness. What's the problem here? The problem is, as put very powerfully by David Hume, the hard problem of consciousness. How could objective processes in the brain produce consciousness? Let me bring in here an argument from the philosopher and thinker Bernardo Kastrup. He says this is an atrocious argument. Why? He puts it in 4 steps. If you say some matter produces consciousness, material processes produce consciousness, he says, look at it, what are you saying? You're saying this in 4 steps. He wants to show why this is an awful position to take. Step 1, where we are all agreed. I am conscious. I means individually I or you. I am conscious. Nobody denies that. Except maybe Daniel Dennett. But nobody else denies that. I am conscious. Step 1. Materialist, panpsychist, idealist, Indian philosopher, Western philosopher, Greek philosopher. Nobody denies I am conscious. Step 2. Others are also conscious. Now we are relaxing the rigor of the argument a little bit. Others are also conscious. Immediately those who are trained in philosophy will say, how do you know that? Because there's a whole branch of the philosophy of mind called the problem of other minds. How do we know that others are not zombies, they're actually conscious? But Bernardo Kastrup says, we can know it in one way. I am conscious, since you're certain about that. You're certain about one thing, that it's happened once. Consciousness has happened once. In your own case, and nobody ever doubts it. If it has happened once, you can sort of extend it and say in similar cases it must have happened in. The problem is we can't access other people's consciousness directly. I can see your behavior, your words, but not your consciousness. But since I am conscious, and you guys are a bit like me, so you guys must be conscious, you are not zombies. Step 2, we'll grant you that. Step 3, big jump. What we experience in consciousness, these objects exist independently of consciousness. Although there is no way of verifying it. If you try to verify it, you have to verify it in consciousness. But the claim is the universe exists quite apart from consciousness. In fact, consciousness is a Johnny-come-lately. Much later in evolution, life evolved and then consciousness evolved. The universe exists apart from consciousness. There is no strictly logical way of verifying this or arriving at this conclusion. And then he says the 4th and the most atrocious conclusion. This so-called object universe, the objective universe, which we claim exists apart from consciousness, but we have no way of verifying. which is available to us only in consciousness, that produces consciousness. That is the one which is producing consciousness. Logically speaking, this is not good. This is not a good argument. Anyway, so this is the problem with a materialist reduction of consciousness to matter. Logically speaking or philosophically speaking, these are the issues. Today, the hard problem of consciousness. And I would just say, look at the data statistically. The difficulty we are having in trying to explain consciousness to the brain. It shouldn't be such a big problem. The brain is an organ in the body. We know how the liver functions, how the kidney functions, how the heart functions. We know it down to the molecular level. We understand the brain also down to the molecular level. But its primary product, consciousness, we can't just seem to find the link between consciousness and the brain. That's the whole issue with this approach. So ancient Indians also had this kind of philosophy called materialism. They said consciousness is produced by matter. It's just you mix matter together and at some point consciousness comes up. Then the second approach is consciousness produces the object. Who says this? Religions of the world. Especially the theistic religions which say God creates the universe. And obviously your God would, whatever it is, it would be a conscious God. So, philosophically speaking, what you're saying is consciousness creates the universe. That would be the relationship. The universe emerges from consciousness. The problem with this is the problem with atheism or agnosticism. Such a God is extremely difficult to prove. The real problem with God is doubt. From the ancient times till today, you have people who doubt the very possibility of the existence of God. And on good philosophical grounds, as David Hume said, that if you extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof, and there really isn't much extraordinary proof for the existence of God. So there are a lot of these theistic philosophers in ancient India who said there is a God who creates the universe. The other option would be that neither creates the other, a thoroughgoing dualism. There is a material universe and there is consciousness, a fundamental reality. It's not emergent. See, now we are going to the third option. Consciousness is a fundamental reality, not in the way we are conscious, but some kind of basal consciousness exists by itself, and material universe also exists, and the two interact. Where do they interact? In us. We are interactions of consciousness and the material body. So this is not new. In fact, today David Hume is proposing something like this. He calls it a panpsychist view, that there is consciousness is a fundamental reality along with time, space, matter, energy and all that, and they interact. In ancient India there were philosophers called the Sankhya. And they proposed this, that, and it's a very appealing kind of philosophy because it matches our experience. Because what's our experience? Subject and object. I am there and the rest of the world is there, including my own body. I am there and I'm experiencing stuff. And you just put it into two groups. You basically are consciousness and the material universe is object. Problem with this? First, the main problem with this is the problem with all kinds of dualism. Like Descartes ran into the problem of the mind-body dualism, which still hasn't been solved in the philosophy of mind. This is a similar problem. How would an utterly different consciousness interact with an utterly different objective universe? At what point? We are saying they're interacting, consciousness and matter interacting in us. But how? I am conscious, but we still don't know how I am controlling or even influencing this physical body. At what point am I touching this body? Would the point of interaction be matter or consciousness? So a dualism doesn't work. And a lot of science is actually always trying to overcome a dualism. You have multiple entities, you try to find something more fundamental which unites these entities together. There is also a whole range of Buddhist views. Both consciousness and object are said to be empty. They say that, for example, notice that it's only when you're conscious you're aware of objects. Only when they're objects you're aware of being conscious. Flush out all objects from consciousness as good as being unconscious. It's like general anesthesia or deep sleep. And knock out consciousness, no objects are presented. So they say these two are interdependent. They are neither fundamental, they arise and fall together. That's another view, the emptiness school of Buddhism.